today, for lives come quietly to rest, each leaving behind a different kind of echo. One shaped childhood memories on black and white screens. One stood firm in silence, guarding a goal during football's most demanding years. One worked behind the lens, preserving truth so history would not fade. And one turned daily struggle into laughter, not to escape life, but to understand it. These were not lives built on noise or spectacle. They were built on discipline, patience, and purpose. Their stories span entertainment, sport, journalism, and comedy, yet they share a common thread: steady contribution over time. In remembering them, this film does not rush. It pauses. Because some legacies are not announced loudly. They are felt slowly, long after the moment has passed. The news arrived quietly, confirmed in the early hours of January 2026. Sidney Kibrick had passed away, closing a chapter of film history that had remained open for nearly a century. Born on July 2, 1928, Kibrick entered the world just as American cinema was learning how to speak. Sound films were still new, and childhood on screen had not yet become a performance. It was simply life, captured as it unfolded. When Kibrick joined the Our Gang Short Subjects in the early 1930s, he became part of something rare, a group of children whose presence felt honest rather than staged. During the Great Depression, audiences did not turn to theaters for spectacle alone. They came for comfort. The Our Gang films offered that comfort through simple stories of mischief, friendship, and small victories. Kibrick appeared in more than 24 of these shorts between 1933 and 1939, often playing characters shaped by curiosity and quiet humor rather than loud punchlines. On screen, he was never larger than life. That was the point. His performances reflected the everyday child, sometimes stubborn, sometimes unsure, but always real. Film historians later noted that the strength of Our Gang was not in polished acting, but in how naturally the children existed together. Kibrick fit into that rhythm with ease. Those films mattered because of when they were made. Families struggling through economic hardship saw children who argued, failed, learned, and tried again. The laughter was gentle, not forced. It reminded audiences that joy could survive even in uncertain times. In many ways, Kibrick's work became a quiet record of resilience. As the years passed, the Our Gang series ended, and childhood moved on. Like many child actors of that era, Kibrick did not remain in Hollywood. He stepped away without drama, choosing a life beyond the camera. There were no farewell speeches or final bows. Acting had been a chapter, not a destination. Friends later described that choice as natural. One family member would later say, he never felt like he left something behind. He felt like he finished something. Kibrick's adulthood unfolded away from public attention, rooted in ordinary routines and private responsibilities. While he lived quietly, history moved in the background. One by one, his fellow Our Gang cast members passed away. Over time, Kibrick became the last surviving actor who had played a featured character in the series. That distinction was never one he sought, but it followed him gently into old age. Film preservationists often reached out, hoping he might share memories of those early days. When he did speak, his recollections were simple. He talked about long hours on set, about not fully understanding fame, about seeing filmmaking as play rather than work. "We were just kids," he once said. "We didn't know we were part of history." That quiet humility defined how he carried the weight of memory. While audiences saw him as a symbol of early cinema, he remained grounded in the reality that those films were moments lived, not monuments built. Yet as decades passed, their importance only grew. Early Hollywood did more than entertain. It preserved accents, expressions, and social rhythms that might otherwise have disappeared. Through grainy black and white frames, entire generations could see how children once spoke, moved, and dreamed. Kibrick became one of the last living connections to that preserved world. Social media tributes following his death reflected that sense of loss. One film archivist wrote, "With Sidney Kibrick's passing, a living doorway to early American film has closed." Another fan shared, "He carried childhood memories for all of us longer than anyone else." His death in January 2026 did not come with spectacle. There were no red carpets or breaking headlines. Instead, there was a pause. A recognition that something rare had ended, not just a life, but a living link. Kibrick's story challenges modern ideas of success. He did not chase lifelong fame or public recognition. His impact came from a brief window in time, yet that window remained open for generations who discovered our gang through television reruns, classrooms, and film archives. In later years, historians often spoke about the children of early cinema as unintentional cultural historians. They did not document history with words, but with presence. Kibrick's face, preserved on film, carried the expressions of an era shaped by hardship, hope, and humor. As one classic film scholar reflected, he reminded us that the past is not distant. Sometimes it lives quietly among us, until one day it doesn't. That absence is what makes his passing feel heavier than numbers or dates suggest. Sidney Henry Kibrick lived long enough to see the world transform beyond recognition. Yet his earliest moments remained frozen in time, still laughing, still learning, still part of a group of children who helped a nation smile during its hardest years. Now, that chapter rests. But the films remain. The laughter remains. And so does the reminder that history is not always carried by famous speeches or grand events. Sometimes, it is carried by a child on screen, simply being himself, and remembered for nearly 100 years. In the end, Sidney Kibrick did not just belong to cinema's past. He safeguarded it, quietly, until the very last page was turned. The news was confirmed quietly in January 2026, without ceremony or spectacle. Colin McDonald had passed away, marking the end of a life that stood firmly between football's past and its present. Born in 1930, McDonald came of age in a time when English football valued steadiness over show. Goalkeepers were not expected to perform for crowds or cameras. They were expected to endure. When McDonald arrived at Burnley, Turf Moor was a place where pressure settled heavily, and mistakes were remembered longer than moments of brilliance. Across 2 spells with the club, he made more than 200 appearances. He was not known for dramatic dives or loud celebrations. Instead, teammates trusted him because he was always there. Match after match, season after season, McDonald offered the same calm presence. Supporters came to see him as a constant, a figure who made uncertainty feel manageable. Those years defined his reputation. While others chased attention, McDonald built respect. His performances did not dominate headlines, but they shaped results. One former Burnley defender later said, "Playing in front of Colin felt like playing with an extra layer of protection. You could take risks, because he was steady behind you." That reliability earned him more than local admiration. McDonald's form carried him onto the international stage, where he represented England during a highly competitive era. His inclusion in the 1958 FIFA World Cup squad placed him among the elite of his time. Recognition in Ballon d'Or voting further confirmed what many already knew: his quiet excellence had not gone unnoticed. Yet even at the highest level, McDonald remained the same. He did not seek attention, and he did not demand praise. He understood his role and honored it fully. Football writers often described him as a goalkeeper who reduced chaos rather than created drama. Then came the injury that changed everything. A serious leg injury brought his playing career to an early end. For many athletes, such a moment feels like loss. For McDonald, it became a turning point. He did not speak of what was taken away. Instead, he focused on what remained. Leaving the pitch did not mean leaving football. McDonald moved into management, scouting, and player development. His understanding of the game, shaped by years of observation and discipline, found new purpose. He became known for recognizing potential before it was obvious. Several players later credited him for believing in them early. One former prospect recalled, "He didn't promise success. He promised honesty. And that meant more." McDonald's influence extended quietly into the next generation, shaping careers without seeking recognition. As the decades passed, football changed. Stadiums grew louder. The game moved faster. But McDonald's values never shifted. He believed football was built on trust, structure, and patience. Those principles guided his work long after his playing days ended. In his later years, he became a living link to an earlier era of English football. With the passing of time, he also became the oldest living England international. It was a title that carried history rather than status. Those who spoke with him said he carried it lightly. Following his death, tributes reflected the same tone that defined his life. A former teammate wrote, "Colin was never the loudest man in the room, but he was always the one you relied on." A supporter shared online, "He didn't just guard the goal. He guarded the feeling of what football used to be." McDonald's story is not one of noise or fame. It is a story of presence. Of standing firm when others faltered. Of understanding that success is not always measured by applause, but by trust earned over time. At Turf Moor, generations of supporters came and went. Players wore different shirts. Managers changed. But for a crucial period, Colin McDonald stood as the last wall, absorbing pressure so others could move forward. His passing in January 2026 closed a chapter that stretched across eras. Yet his influence remains woven into the fabric of the game. In the calm moments between attacks, in the quiet confidence of a well-organized defense, his legacy still speaks. Some players protect goals. Others protect memories. Colin McDonald did both. And in doing so, he protected an era of football that will not be forgotten. The confirmation came quietly on January 4, 2026, from Bel Air, without headlines or spectacle. Andy Friendly had passed away, leaving behind a legacy built not on recognition, but on trust. Born in New York City in 1951, Friendly grew up in a place where stories moved fast and voices competed for attention. He learned early that not every important voice needed to be the loudest. That understanding would shape a career spent mostly behind the camera, guiding stories rather than claiming them. From the beginning, Friendly showed a rare ability to move between worlds. He worked in news, comedy, and documentary television with equal care, never forcing tone or message. Colleagues often said he had a way of making people feel safe enough to be honest. In an industry driven by urgency, he valued patience. His leadership style was subtle. He did not impose ideas. He listened, adjusted, and built spaces where truth could emerge on its own. One longtime collaborator once said, "Andy didn't tell you what to say. He helped you find the best way to say it." That approach earned him respect across generations of journalists and producers. While much of his work remained unseen by the public, its impact was lasting. Friendly understood that television could shape memory, not just opinion. That belief guided his later work, especially when he turned his focus toward history and preservation. A defining chapter of his life came through his leadership at the USC Shoah Foundation. There, Friendly helped guide projects dedicated to recording and protecting first-hand testimony from survivors and witnesses of historical trauma. His role in Liberation Heroes, the last eyewitnesses, reflected his deepest values. Rather than framing himself as a storyteller, Friendly acted as a steward. He believed the stories belonged to those who lived them. His responsibility was to ensure they were treated with care and accuracy. "The work isn't about us," he once remarked in a private discussion. "It's about making sure memory survives when voices are gone." That philosophy shaped every decision. Under his guidance, interviews were conducted with sensitivity and restraint. The focus stayed on dignity, not drama. The result was a body of work that continues to educate and remind, without exploiting pain. As years passed, Friendly expanded his service beyond media. He devoted time to education initiatives and community health advocacy, applying the same quiet leadership to causes far from cameras. Those close to him said this phase of his life brought him particular peace. A family member later shared, Andy believed service didn't need an audience. He felt the work mattered most when it spoke for itself. That belief echoed through everything he touched, from classrooms to community programs. Despite his accomplishments, Friendly remained largely unknown to the wider public. Yet his influence shaped how millions encountered news, history, and truth. He stood behind countless moments of clarity, ensuring stories were told with balance and respect. Following his passing, tributes reflected the same tone that defined his life. A fellow producer wrote online, "Andy Friendly made space for truth when the world rushed past it." Another colleague shared, "History is safer because of the way he worked." Friendly's death did not feel like the loss of a public figure. It felt like the loss of a structure, something steady that had been holding stories in place. His absence revealed how much depended on his presence. In an age driven by speed and attention, Andy Friendly chose care. He chose collaboration over credit, listening over speaking, preservation over performance. His career proved that leadership does not require visibility. As the final witnesses of major historical moments continue to fade, the systems he helped build remain. Their voices endure because someone believed they deserved time, respect, and protection. Andy Friendly's life reminds us that history survives not only through those who speak, but through those who make listening possible. His work lives on in archives, classrooms, and quiet moments of understanding. He leaves behind no spotlight, but something far more lasting. A framework of trust. A record of truth. And the knowledge that sometimes, the most important architects are the ones never seen. The news was confirmed on December 29, 2025, without noise or build-up. John Mulrooney had passed away, closing the chapter on a life spent finding meaning through laughter. Born and raised in Brooklyn, Mulrooney was shaped by working-class routines and sharp observation. Comedy did not arrive as an escape for him. It arrived as a way to pay attention. From the beginning, he listened closely to people, to pauses, to the small truths hidden inside everyday life. When he entered New York City's comedy scene, it was demanding and unforgiving. Clubs rewarded discipline, not exaggeration. Mulrooney developed a style built on clarity and control. His jokes were measured, thoughtful, and grounded in reality rather than spectacle. Early performances at Pip's Comedy Club gave him momentum. The room was known for its tough crowds and honest reactions. Surviving there meant earning laughter, not chasing it. Mulrooney earned it slowly, line by line, set by set. National exposure followed, but fame did not arrive quickly. One moment, in particular, stayed with him. His appearance on Star Search did not end in victory. For many performers, that kind of public loss can linger. For Mulrooney, it became a turning point. Instead of seeing the moment as failure, he treated it as direction. He stepped back, reassessed, and kept working. A fellow comedian later recalled, "John didn't complain about missed chances. He just got better." That mindset would define the rest of his career. As time passed, Mulrooney expanded his work beyond the stage. Writing and producing became central to his life in comedy. He understood that laughter was not just something delivered in front of a microphone. It was something built carefully, often behind the scenes. His move to Los Angeles marked another shift. In a city driven by attention and image, Mulrooney chose steadiness. He worked consistently, contributing to projects without demanding the spotlight. Comedy, for him, was labor. honest, repetitive, and necessary. Those who worked alongside him often spoke about his reliability. One producer shared, "John showed up prepared. He respected the work. He respected the room." That professionalism earned him trust, even when recognition stayed limited. Mulrooney's humor never chased trends. It stayed rooted in observation and restraint. He believed laughter worked best when it came from truth, not volume. "If it's real, people feel it," he once said to a younger comic. "If it's forced, they hear that too." Over the years, he became a quiet presence in the industry. Not everyone knew his name, but many knew his influence. His writing helped shape moments that audiences remembered without always knowing why. When news of his death spread, tributes reflected the tone of his life. One comedian posted, "John Mulrooney treated comedy like a craft, not a shortcut." Another wrote, "He didn't chase applause. He earned respect." Mulrooney's story is not one of sudden fame or dramatic comeback. It is a story of endurance. Of choosing work over ego. Of believing that laughter, offered honestly, could help people carry their days a little better. Comedy often hides behind brightness. But Mulrooney understood its deeper role. Laughter was not a way to avoid life's weight. It was a way to survive it. To name it. To soften it, just enough. His passing at the end of 2025 felt quiet, fitting the way he lived. There were no grand announcements, only reflection. A sense that someone dependable was suddenly gone. Yet what he left behind continues. In well-crafted jokes. In disciplined writing. In the belief that humor can be thoughtful and still be kind. Mulrooney's work reminds us that comedy does not have to shout to matter. In the end, John Mulrooney offered laughter the way some offer service. Repeatedly. Patiently. Without demand. And for those who listened closely, that laughter made life a little easier to face.